So our first presentation is from Morgan Domijan. She's a fundraising coach at Get Fully Funded. And she's going to be talking about the formula for successful fundraising. Morgan is a fundraising coach at Get Fully Funded, supporting fundraisers and nonprofit leaders with tools and resources to be confident and successful when fundraising. As a previous teacher, Morgan wakes up inspired every day that her role as a coach combines her love for education and fundraising. She has co-founded a nonprofit and understands firsthand the complexities of a startup. Morgan has also lived across Africa in the last 6 years, fundraising for international and American nonprofits. She supported a variety of causes, including animal welfare nonprofits, and continues to help nonprofits with their online fundraising, building donor relationships, and storytelling. Morgan's personal passion is traveling, and you can find her splitting her time between Africa and Dallas, Texas. To find out more about Morgan and the Get Fully Funded team, you can just go to getfullyfunded.com/about. And it's great organization. I can't say more about it. Morgan, on to you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Stacy, for that great introduction. And also thank you so much for such a great intro to the Get Fully Funded team. We are just so excited to be here. This is always such a fun one. But thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be able to kickstart such a fun conference. Want to make sure everybody can hear me okay. I think everybody can see.
Everything is good technologically. You are perfect, Morgan.
Great. Okay, let's dive into this. So as Stacey mentioned, I'm here to talk about four-legged fundraising and how to fully fund your organization and save more lives. My name is Morgan Domijan. I am a fundraising coach for the Get Fully Funded team, and let's just dive right in. So you are in the right place if you have a big vision, but maybe you need to raise more money and you want to grow your programs. Or maybe you're here because you would love to hire staff and actually pay yourself. Or maybe you're here because you haven't yet mastered fundraising and you would love for it to be easier. I would love if hopefully a poll will pop up. Let's make sure. Which one of these do you want most? Would you like to raise more money to grow your programs? Would love to hire staff or pay yourself, or haven't yet mastered the fundraising and you want it just to be easier? I'll give you some time to fill out that poll. Just love to know why everyone's here. What is your motivation to being here? What's one of your big goals for this year?
Gonna let it go just about 5 more seconds, and then we will close the poll. Looks like everybody's voted. Okay. Now let's share the results. So which of these do you most want? 40% say need to raise more money to grow programs. 15% would love to hire staff or pay yourself. 45% say haven't yet mastered fundraising and want it to be easier.
Awesome. Well, long story short, everybody is here because they want to focus on fundraising and they want to grow their nonprofit and making sure that they find fundraising easy and they leave with confidence in they lead with confidence in their fundraising. So what you'll get out from today, we have a couple different topics that we're going to be focusing on, but why your current fundraising isn't bringing in the money you need. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. A 3-part formula for successful fundraising. It's one of my favorite formulas and works every single time. The 1 to 10 to 1,000 rule, and ideas for things you can do today. It's so important. I mean, I always love attending a conference and it's like, okay, leaving this conference, I know I can go out and do these things so it will improve my fundraising. So we'll have some fun tips and tricks for that. So just to start out, a little bit about me. I am a fundraising coach. I'm a trainer and a nonprofit founder. I am also an animal lover, and I support a variety of different animal nonprofits, which has been so much fun. But I have to be honest with you all and my journey with cats. So growing up, I actually wasn't a huge cat fan, but it's because I absolutely had no reason not to be. I just didn't really grow up with them, and I just didn't know much about them. And it wasn't until I met my fiance about 6 years ago, and he has absolutely converted me into a cat lover. I just love them so much. But I will tell you a little bit more about my cats in a second. But leaving today's conference, I hope that if your fundraising journey kind of started out like my cat journey, that I will convert you into not being fearful, but also confident and love the power of fundraising. Stacy did a little bit of an intro about Sandy, but Sandy is our founder of Get Fully Funded. She's absolutely incredible. And I thought I was an animal lover. Sandy is, I mean, just the next level. She absolutely loves her animals. She has lots of kitties herself. She's fostering a couple right now. And as Stacy mentioned, she has just grown the team tremendously, especially over the last couple years. We have over 14 employees and fundraising experts, a variety of different nonprofit leaders and coaches. So it's a really fun and diverse team that I get to work with every day. Okay, diving in a little bit into my crew and my rescues. I have two kitties in these pictures, and they're both rescued. They did have, or I should say they have the most creative names. We have white cat on the left and brown cat in the middle. My mother-in-law chose the most complex names, and it just didn't really stick with them. So our nephews renamed them to white cat and brown cat, and it just kind of stuck. And we love them so much. We love them dearly. And I couldn't leave out my other furry friend and my bestie, Suki. She's a Rhodesian Ridgeback puppy. Her and White Cat, the cat on the left, they have such a fun relationship. White Cat's constantly chasing and bossing Suki around, which I absolutely love. So she puts her right into her place. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my own crew and rescues. And as Stacy mentioned, it gets a little confusing to some people, but the fun fact is I actually do live a majority of my time in Zambia, Africa, on a very remote farm. So I live about an hour and a half away to the closest teeny tiny town. We do our grocery shopping in the capital, which is about 6 hours away. So we're very remote. But as you can imagine, we surround ourselves with tons of animals. We have cats, dogs, birds, rescued wild animals, and so much more. On the left is Brown Cat again with our other dog, Bentley. And talk about best friends. They are absolutely best friends, and I've never seen an animal bond so strong, which is really fun. In the middle, we have Bentley again with one of our rescued calves. And again, immediate besties. Bentley's amazing at making new friends. And then I had to add a picture of an Ellie because people do tend to ask, living out in the middle of the bush, do we have wild animals that come to visit? And the answer is yes. While we don't have any wild cats, that has not happened to us yet. We do have elephants, we have buffalo, lots of buck, tons and tons of different variety of bird species, and lots of monkeys. So sometimes if you ever find me in a presentation when I'm presenting from Africa, you might hear the monkeys running on the roof, which is fun. So that's a little bit about myself. But in regards to fundraising and kind of my fundraising journey, here's my story. I wasn't born with fundraising skills. I've always loved animals, as I mentioned. I didn't sign up for fundraising at Career Day. Actually, my background is in elementary education. My master's is in curriculum development. So it's actually really fun now using those skills as a fundraising coach, but definitely did not sign up for fundraising. And the majority of people who are fundraisers now, you kind of hear the same thing that happens to them. They did not even know what fundraising was, nor did they know that could be a career. But where I learned it, so in 2014, I co-founded a nonprofit. I was actually a senior in college and had no clue what I was doing. All I did know was I was passionate about mental health and I could not lose another friend. So I'm sure many of you can relate to starting your nonprofit or joining your nonprofit because you too are deeply passionate about changing lives. But as I mentioned, I didn't go to school to become a fundraiser. I learned all by trial and error. I showed up every single day because I was passionate about making a change and I knew I had to share stories that would catch donors' attention. I learned how to storytell and I learned the importance of a donor journey. I learned that fundraising wasn't easy, but showing up every single day, I could make impact and change lives. So then several years later, I actually moved out to Zambia, Africa, and was a fundraising manager out there. And the nonprofit was spread all across East and Southern Africa, which actually one of my favorite projects was fundraising for a leopard conservation project in South Africa, which was really unique. And that was probably my first time working in the animal, not with animal nonprofits. And so after years in fundraising and working with a variety of different nonprofits, I became deeply passionate about the power of storytelling and campaign creations. And also just really knowing and learning and understanding how taking a donor on an incredible journey is so important to a sustainable foundation. So that way we can continue to make an impact, and donors can really donate to causes that they truly love. So since then, this is kind of a info slide of everybody that Get Fully Funded has worked with, but then also myself. I'm currently working with the Wildlife Rescue Center, Unity Farm Sanctuary, Epic Outreach, Draft of Gratitude, and many, many more animal sanctuaries, which is really fun. So it's full circle how it all works out in life, but love working with animal nonprofits. And today, after winning several global awards for campaigns, I started consulting and working with incredible nonprofits in the Get Fully Funded team. And the reason I share all of this is because I can guarantee you I have felt all the same feelings you might be feeling today as a fundraiser. But with dedication and with a strategy and a plan comes rewards. So my hope for you today is to leave feeling more confident in fundraising so that you too can make money for your special cause. Okay, let's dive into the actual nitty-gritties of fundraising, the fun stuff. Let's talk about it. So, when you raise more money, you can save more lives. Why fundraise? It's because when you raise more money, you can save more lives. You can impact more four-legged friends and make an impact that you set out to achieve. More money equals big change. But I'm sure so many of you here today are feeling this. Why is fundraising so hard? You're not alone in this feeling, but we're here to help you and here to make it a little bit easier. So I would love to know, you might be thinking this, your fundraising problems, you might identify with a couple of these. Do any of these problems sound familiar? So maybe you're doing it backwards. You don't have a plan in place and you don't know where to start with fundraising. Or maybe you're chasing nickels and dimes. You're putting hours and hours into fundraising, but you're really getting only small donations in return. Or maybe you're doing sole source funding, meaning you're only focusing on one source of income, such as grants or maybe a sponsorship program. I would love to know in a poll, what one do any of these problems sound familiar to you, or what one do you identify with the most?
I just launched the poll. Folks are voting away. So do any of these problems sound familiar? Doing it backward, chasing nickels and dimes, or doing sole source funding? All right. I'm going to close the poll, share the results. So we've got 20% say doing it backward, 50% say chasing nickels and dimes, 30% say doing sole source funding.
Cool, thank you for that. So we're all here because, yeah, we have somewhat of a fundraising problem and we need a little bit of support, and we're actually going to dive into more around sole source funding for right now. So what is sole source fundraising? This means that you are focusing on only one source of income when it comes to fundraising. So for example, you might be only focusing on grants or the adoption program or sponsorship program. You essentially have put all your eggs into one basket and forgetting about focusing on a diverse fundraising plan. And when this happens, this leads you to being stuck. It can limit how many animals you can actually help in the end, and it actually may knock you out of the running for grants. So We've actually worked with some grant funders and companies such as Petco, and they actually prefer when an organization's funding is diverse. So they want to see that you can run sustainably in case one component of fundraising doesn't pull through the way you planned. So it's so important, especially for grants, but all around, to have making sure that your fundraising is diverse. A few years ago, actually, Sandy worked with a client, and they had almost received all their funding for $1 million budget and a single grant through the state of Tennessee. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine where this led, kind of cue in that sad music. So when the state went through budget cuts, which happens all the time, that's kind of natural, and reduced its grant funding, it then rendered the organization ineligible under new guidelines. So the impact on the nonprofit was swift and super harsh. So it went from thriving to struggling just because all their eggs were in one basket. The nonprofit leaders had not prepared for any other revenue and no earned income from other programs. So there was no fundraising from other individuals, there was no private foundation grants, nothing. And they had been around for 3 decades, but they still hadn't asked anybody for a donation. So we want to make sure that you're not those people today, and we can learn from this story. So do not rely on a single source of funding, because you never know when it might vanish. But on the flip side, during COVID, and I'm sure if you your nonprofit was working during COVID, many nonprofits were really scared that they would lose some of their funding and donations because people were putting their efforts into COVID-19 focused nonprofits. And that actually did happen. And a lot of grant funders and major donors started putting their money towards COVID-19 relief. However, because so many of our clients and other clients that I've worked with had a diverse fundraising plan and sources of income, they were absolutely okay because they had healthy streams of revenue. So, okay, I'm telling all these stories, and you're saying not to put your eggs in one basket. What does a good diversified fundraising plan look like? So we like to say no more than 25% of your organizational income should come from one single source. So kind of think of a pie chart, break it up. This means that you have a mix of different donors. So you have your online giving, you have your major donors, maybe your monthly donations, events, corporate contributions, grants, and so on. So start looking at a more holistic approach instead of the sole source funding. We're going to get a little bit more into that as well. I love this. This is what we use a lot with our clients, underfunded versus fully funded. So an underfunded mentality, mindset, kind of practices look a lot like your mindset is focused on your fundraisers, you're making decisions based on a checkbook. You live maybe one cash infusion to the next. There's that sole source revenue again. You have the poverty mentality, kind of settle for whatever they get, and whatever comes your way, you'll say yes to. And it's all about the money and transactional. We do not want this. We want to be fully funded mindsets and practicing fully funded fundraising efforts. So that looks like we are focused on donors. We are making decisions based on what is best for the vision. We have a steady stream of revenue all year long. We have a diversified revenue. So that's what we talked about, having multiple sources of revenue. Committed to doing whatever is best to be successful. Not good with the status quo and finds a way to overcome it. And it's all about the relationship and future donations. I cannot hone in on enough on the fact about it is all about the relationship. And we're going to talk more, but relationship. So the myth of the shoestring budget. For some reason, and I too fell into this myth when I first joined the nonprofit world. For some reason in the nonprofit world, especially with newer or smaller nonprofits, there is this myth that you have to run on a very small, tight budget, or the smaller the budget for the overhead costs, like salaries, the more goes to the programs. But it is so wrong. We need to get to a point where you and your employees are getting paid for your hard work, so in return can give the best to your four-legged friends. So I want to do a couple more myths to debunk, and these are some fun ones that I hear around are actually really not so fun ones that I hear around being said across the nonprofit world, and definitely want to share more about it. So one is, I'll pay for everything myself until other people notice the great work I'm doing. How many of us have been in that position? I'm sure there's several of us. But trying to self-fund your nonprofit will actually leave you exhausted and feeling alone in your work. Nonprofits need supporters to grow and thrive. Nonprofits need a team of people who can deeply care about work pulling together and working towards a goal. This is how nonprofit organizations gain momentum. So a nonprofit cannot be a solitary enterprise. Another myth, and this is one of my favorite ones, and I hear it so often: I need to find a donor like Oprah who will fund my whole organization. I'm so sorry to say, but Oprah is pretty busy these days, and good luck knocking down her door. Instead of targeting people because of their income, approach people because they have a passion for your organization's work. So kind of change that mindset as well. So where does your gold lie? And that lies with your individual donors. Your most valuable asset is your donor database. So it's time to do something. Let's get to work. And how are we going to do that? So what fundraising is? Fundraising is donor focused. It is a partnership opportunity, and that is such a mindset shift and change. It is a collaboration, not a one-way street. It is transformational for the donor and the charity. What fundraising isn't? It is not begging. It is not arm twisting. It is not selling stuff, and it is not hitting people up. And I know sometimes we have these feelings that we think fundraising is this, but it's absolutely not. And we're gonna change those mindsets. Okay, this is, as I mentioned, one of my favorite fundraising success formulas. So the right people plus the right time plus the right message equals a donation. I'm going to say it one more time. The right people plus the right time plus the right message equals a donation. We're going to dive into those three different parts of how we're going to find that donation. The first part is the right people. So we need to find the right people that care about the impact your organization is making, people that is best fit for you. Growing a donor database requires ongoing, consistent effort to find the right people and invite them to give. That means you can't wait for people to find you. You need to find them. You need your donor prospect radar up at all times. So every time you meet somebody, it's an opportunity to make a new friend for the organization and maybe turn that new friend into a first-time donor. Start by understanding that not everyone will give to your organization, and that's totally fine. That's okay. Again, mindset. So don't even think that everyone should or will give. So, however, you might see these things getting in your way when looking for the right people. And the first one is around the passion myth. So you'll see a couple of myths, as I mentioned, being busted in this presentation, because we really need to stop them immediately. And the passion myth is when you think you have to find people who are just as passionate as you are. You're looking everywhere to find people who share the same interests as you, the same values, or just as passionate as you are about cats. But that's okay if they're not as passionate about you. They just have to care. So find people who just have to care. The second one is a broad appeal. This is pretty self-explanatory, but you might be asking too broad or you're asking too broad or too big of a community who doesn't really have interest in your cause. Your groups might be too mixed with different people who love different causes. And then the third one that might be getting in your way is an inconsistent outreach. Follow-up is so key, and consistency is so key. In fundraising, you will always be looking for new donors. That just is the nature of it. In order to get these new donors in the door and to care, you have to be consistent with communication. Sharing your story and telling them how they can be part of the impact or solution in your monthly, and I really try to encourage this with all my clients, in your monthly fundraising strategy or your plan or your checklist, make sure to include a monthly outreach checkbox so you don't lose momentum. It's that consistent reminder that you need to consistently outreach and look for new donors. Okay, so we're saying all these things about finding our ideal donor, but who is your ideal donor? How do we find them? Your ideal donor, it will help you identify your specific donor so you can find more people like them. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this ideal donor profile. I love doing this activity with clients because it really makes you sit down, put some work towards, who you think is specific to your own nonprofit. Do not compare yourself to others, but who is specific for you. So some questions that you can ask yourself. Get down a pen and paper or pencil and paper after this conference and write down all these questions. Are they male or female? What is their age range? What are some of their values? What do they do for fun? Do they have a family? Where do they spend their time? Where do they spend their money? And what are some other fun questions that you can sit down and look at? Okay, this is great, but it's like, okay, now where do I find out all this information? So actually a really good starting point is to look at your current donors, if and only if they're your ideal client. So write down all their information, go and look at your donor database and see if there's any trends, and that might tell you some more information about and to answering these questions. Additionally, social media and email tools track a lot of this information. So look at your followers' ages, gender, location, all through social media and email tools. So Facebook is great, Instagram is great. We use Constant Contact for our email tool. So, and they have really good information about your donors. So for example, one of my current clients is a farm sanctuary. We were actually just reviewing all this information the other day because we're trying to expand their donor database. And just by looking at their email tool and social media, we found that over 85% of their donors are actually female. Their average ages are 45 to 65. 95% of their donors open their emails via desktop, via computer, which is like very mind-blowing. That's a very high rate, but it goes to show something really important information right there. We know their location from all this information as well. So all this gives us insight to the type of messaging we're going to be putting out there and how they're going to receive their information. We haven't focused, for example, okay, this is a fun one. We haven't focused on acquiring donors on TikTok yet, because if you look at our donor information, they're not on TikTok. We're not going to acquire new donors on TikTok, but maybe we're going to be finding them reading newspapers or online blogs. We've also found that our donors love receiving handwritten letters or mailed postcards. So when you start to break it down, you can kind of figure out where your donors are going to lie and be. Finally, be strategic when finding new donors. So look for people with a connection to your mission. Start with your family. That's always a great place, especially if you're a newer nonprofit. But from there, start with people who you have interacted with but has not given. So here's where you want to find people who have interacted with your nonprofit or have a connection to your nonprofit but haven't given yet, like friends of board members and volunteers, people who have attended events but have not become donors, followers on social media who haven't yet given, people who have shopped in your thrift store, vendors, anyone else who has had an experience with your nonprofit but yet hasn't made a donation. Then look at people who like your cause. They care about your cause but didn't know yet you existed. So it just goes outward from there. Okay, the big question. I want you all to think, where can you find them easily and in large numbers? I'm going to let you think about that for a second. Where can you find your ideal group easily in large numbers. I'm going to give you a couple hints. So a great place to start is Facebook groups, community groups, conferences, forums. So start thinking once you start honing in on your ideal donor, how can I find them easily and in large numbers? Okay, that was a lot to soak in, but that was part 1, finding your ideal donor. Now we're going to focus in on part 2, which is the right message, which I'm so excited to see. Later on, there's a speaker presenting about messaging, and that will fit in perfectly with this. So I was excited to see that. Okay, it is all about the right messaging, and this is so key to grabbing people's attention. This is a fun one, and I'm sure we can all guess what restaurant this is. Cheesecake Factory. Sandy absolutely loves the Cheesecake Factory. I think she told me she's been to about 20 or 30 Cheesecake Factories around the US, which is amazing. I absolutely love it. But let's think about Cheesecake Factory and that moment you walk in. Kind of visualize that for a second if you've been to a Cheesecake Factory. Right when you walk in, you go up to the counter and you put your name in for a table. What is right next to you? What do you see? You see endless, delicious cheesecakes. Right away, it captures your attention. Right away, they lead with the most delicious things. They capture you immediately, and by the time your table is ready, you are wanting that cheesecake. You understand why you're there. The messaging is very clear. They capture your attention right away. Okay, kind of now shift to fundraising. We have to do the same thing. Our messaging, we need to lead with the most delicious thing. We need to tell potential donors immediately what you do, but in a delicious way. Please, please do not start off with your messaging or your call to action or your vision statement saying, we are a 501c3 and go on to talk about your accreditation. Not delicious, not fun. You need to lead right away with the most delicious thing. So these three things might get in your way when it comes to your messaging, and we need to stay clear of it. The first thing is self-centeredness. So who has heard the term donor-centered language? I want you to write down that phrase. So it's called donor-centered language. And after this conference, go look more into it. There are tons of resources out there. But essentially, the donor wants to know how their hard-earned money can make an impact. How can they be part of the organization and change lives? It is about them. It is not about us. So in your messaging, go back and see anytime that you wrote we. So we do it a lot in appeals. We do it a lot in thank you notes. Go back and look at a lot on our website. Go back and look and see how we can replace the word we with you. Make it about the donor. Another thing that gets in the way is existence versus impact. There's that impact word again. Communicate to your donor exactly how their donation is going to make an impact. So when becoming part of the organization, what long-term impact are they going to provide? And the third one, I love this one. This is one of Sandy's favorite that she loves to share is jargon breath. So your stories should set your donor hair on fire. Jargon is a flame retardant. So when you use jargon, meaning too big of a word or too many words, the donor is going to keep reading or lose interest. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of examples of what that means and what jargon can look like. For the first one, I want you all to think, what is this really saying? Members of an avian species of identical plumage congregate. That's a big one. I'm going to give you all a couple seconds to maybe figure out what in the world is this sentence trying to say.
You want me to share what folks are saying out in the chat
Sure.
questions box?
Sure.
So we have flock of birds. Birds of a feather flock together.
You are all correct. Yep, birds of a feather flock together. That's a good one. All right, the next one. It is impossible to indoctrinate a superannuated canine in innovative maneuvers. Big one. What are they trying to say?
Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
You're right, absolutely. All right, the last one. Freedom from incrustations of grime is contagious to possessing divine attributes. That is a big one. Lots of big words. This was actually one of the harder ones.
We have here, cleanliness is next to godliness.
You are correct. Whoever said those, congrats. But I think this goes to show our messaging. Is it clear? And I like to say too, like, can a 7th grader understand and learn and know what you're trying to get across? So take a look back at your messaging. Does the code need to be cracked, or is it very clear to a potential donor to knowing exactly what you're asking for or exactly what your impact is? So stop using that jargon and change language to donor-centered language. Okay, within your messaging, we love to talk about the core number over at Get Fully Funded. So the key to raising more money and making fundraising easier is knowing what to say to inspire someone to give. So you must ask for money in a way that people can easily understand, connect with emotionally, and immediately see how their donation is going to be used. So with this strategy, you can take the pressure off of asking for money because the ask is no longer about you. So I'm going to say that again because oftentimes people get really worked up or nervous about the ask because they think it's about them. But because the ask is no longer about you, it's about those who you help. And so how we focus on that and how we kind of figure out our messaging is finding out our core number. So our core number comes in and it quickly explains how much it costs you to deliver a unit of service. So it's a clear explanation to the potential donor. When you calculate your core number, you'll have something that meaningfully represents what your nonprofit does. And most importantly, it's a number that donors will respond to. So to find your core number, it's right here on the screen. You are going to divide the total expenses from last year by the total units of service to get the core number. So we're going to kind of do an exercise now, which explains that further. So say you had $50,000 in expenses from 2021. So $50,000 is all your expenses, your total running expenses for your nonprofit, program expenses, salaries, everything needs to be in there, not just program costs. So $50,000 of expenses from 2021. Say there was 6,525 days of care. You're going to divide that number, and this was an example for a kitten. It's $7.66 per day per kitten. Again, I'll dive into that a little bit more. So again, don't include just the direct expenses because it doesn't give a true picture of what costs you deliver. To deliver a unit of service, you need absolutely everything. Okay, so this is a fun, good example of one who put the core number to use. So the Humane Society of Southeast Missouri, they calculated their core number, which ended up being $6.20. But what does $6.20 do? So your $6.20 donation will feed, shelter, and care for a kitten for one day. Let's see how they use this messaging on their donation page. So help us help the animals. Why give? Your gift changes lives. And then they go into how your gift can actually change lives and the lives of homeless and neglected animals. Every year we care for more than 3,500 animals from our area. We're devoted to helping these animals find loving and forever homes. And they go on to describe more. This page is specifically for monthly giving. It can be used for a single once-off donation or monthly giving. You can use your core number in appeals, many different places, but this is just an example on a monthly giving donation page. But do you see that $6.20 a month number? Right there, it tells become a monthly donor. A little can go a long way. Your $6.20 a month provides 1 day of care. To me, right away, I fully understand how my donation is going to make an impact. You then can multiply it and to make it into larger donations. So $24 times $24.80 a month is an intake period for the first 4 days of care. $43.40 a month is 1 week of care, and $124 a month equals an entire stay worth of care. So it really just helps you, your core number helps you figure out how you're going to communicate to your donors how their donation will make an impact. So after this conference, I would really encourage you to go crunch your core number and then figure out where can you start integrating that into your messaging. A great place to start is your donation page on your website. Another is in your holiday appeal, your email appeal, your written appeal, just kind of figuring out where you can integrate your core number to have clear messaging. Okay, what would make this better? If together we save 4,500 more kittens this year than last, we can end the killing of kittens in Los Angeles. If you don't mind putting it in the chat, what do you think would make this sentence better?
I'm keeping a lookout, Morgan, for comments here.
Thank you, Stacy. What would be missing? So think,
go ahead. Telling how to do that. Is this donor-centric language, or are we using donor-centric language?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Those are all right. And it's a powerful statement for sure. It paints a picture. And I mean, hearing that they want to end the killing of kittens in Los Angeles, it's very powerful, right? We want to do something about it. But how are we going to do something about it? How can we make an impact? What are we going to do? So it's missing that core number. Also making sure it's donor centered. I love hearing that. So they need to tell us, what does it cost to save this kitten? How much does it cost? And here, tell me how can I help? And here's how you can help. All right, so the big question we're going to leave with you today in regards to messaging: what delicious thing are you asking people to support? All right, we are already diving into part 3, which is talking about the right time, all about timing. So I'm sure you can all gather what's happening in this picture. It's a big wedding day, but what happens before this big day? Do you think she wore her white dress on her first date? Do you think he asked her to marry her on the first hour of meeting? So there were lots of building blocks that happened before this. Relationships were built, people were getting to know each other, and mutual decisions were made along the way. Fundraising is just the same. Fundraising is all about the relationship building, and the ask needs to come at the right time. Sandy told me to take this out, but I had to leave it in. It's Sandy's daughter who got married, Kristen, not too long ago, and she is on our team as well. She's absolutely incredible. We would be lost without Kristen. So when is the time right? Is it winter? Is it spring? Is it summer? Is it autumn? How many times do I have to ask? When do I ask? We're going to answer all those questions now. And the answer is it's all about the fundraising cycle. Yes, you can ask, but yes, you have to thank, and yes, you have to update your donors before the next ask. So it says retention happens here. Retention is essentially how are you going to retain or maintain your donors staying donors, month to month, year after year, whatever that looks like for you. And that way is through the thanking and the update. So every time you do an ask, you need to have a thank, you need to have an update of how their donation made an impact, and then you can ask again. So we're going to get a little bit more into that fundraising cycle. We love to talk about always maintaining a positive balance, and I think this is a really good imagery exercise. So what does that mean, maintaining a positive balance? Kind of think of a piggy bank, like a relationship account. So every time you communicate with a donor, you tell a story, share a video, you send them a handwritten card, whatever you're doing to communicate with them, you are depositing into the piggy bank account. So you're adding positive energy into the piggy bank account or the relationship account. But every time you ask, you are taking something out. We need to make sure that you're always maintaining a positive balance. So these three things might be getting in your way to maintain a positive balance or relationship. And the first one is desperation mode. Desperation stinks, and donors can totally smell it. If you haven't planned or communicated to your donors in a long time, you haven't showed them any love, and before you know it, you need $5,000 and you need it now. So you ask the donors and you show how desperate you are and you haven't been communicating to them. What do you think is going to happen? Of course, there's going to be no donations. So desperation mode stinks. The ick factor, your fundraising mindset isn't right, and you think that asking for money is icky. It's that mindset. When you think it's icky, the donor thinks it's icky. So change that mindset to communicate the impact rather than sounding desperate, saying you just need the money. The donor, remember we talked about this earlier, the donor is not donating to you, but the donor is donating to the organization. And then the last one is ignoring the relationship. Again, if you haven't been showing any donor love and you're not showing up and you're just constantly asking for money, you are going to lose your donors. And unfortunately, this is where the biggest areas I see nonprofits neglect the most. And I totally get it, right? As fundraisers, as nonprofit leaders, we are busy. Fundraising is busy and things add up. And for some reason, the donor thank you notes or the donor updates, they usually tend to get forgotten about or pushed aside. I want you to change that immediately, because it is so much harder to find new donors than it is to retain your donors. So you worked so hard. Just think about how hard you worked to find these donors. You worked so hard finding that donor, and now you're going to want to do everything you can do to keep them. So stop ignoring that relationship. The 3-to-1 ratio. So what are we going to do to change this communication? And that is through the 3-to-1 ratio. You can ask as much as you want. So earlier in that slide, it was like, what season do I ask them? When can I ask them? You can honestly ask as much as you want with strategy, as long as there are 3 good, heartwarming communications in between. So, okay, I'm telling you, yeah, communicate. What are some ideas to communicate? And I have some fun ones for you today. Here are some of my favorite, but I encourage you all to just kind of have a running list. With my clients, I have like kind of a donor acknowledgement plan or a schedule with just some fun ideas and touch points of how we're going to show donor love. But here are some my favorite ones. A monthly newsletter. But if you do a monthly newsletter, I'm really going to encourage you not to call it a newsletter. Handwritten thank you notes, blog posts, personalized videos, a tour of your center, invitation to an exclusive event, picking up the phone and just calling them. This one is really fun too, because it can be quick and easy, and donors don't expect it. But if you have the permission to send them a quick text message just to say hi and you were thinking about them, or sending them a quick DM on social media, direct message on social media to say hello, that's always a fun one too, and it's not a lot of work for you all. And then celebrate their donation anniversary. This is another one of my favorites. If a donor comes back year after year, celebrate their anniversary and say, you know, thank you so much for your continued support. We love seeing you here. Add a fun video in it if you want. It's something that is unexpected and they love to see. Quick thing, PS, if you also do a newsletter, please do not put an ask at the end of your newsletter. Keep it all about fun stories, impact, and save the ask for another time. Because remember, the newsletter is a type of communication. And if you do put an ask in there, it's going to take away from that positive piggy bank. The key is to build trust. So people give to nonprofits they trust, people volunteer with nonprofits they trust, and people recommend nonprofits they trust. I'm sure you can all see the key word in there. The key is to build trust. Okay, let's get a little more practical. Fundraising strategies. If I had to use one word to describe our strategy, I'm sure you can all relate. Strategy, what's a strategy? Or maybe you put a plan together and it falls apart, or it's hard to keep consistent. But let's talk through these fundraising strategies. I want you to stay away from nickel and dime activities, sole source funding, and doing the same old thing. All right, we have a poll coming up. Would love to know, do you all have a fundraising plan? Yes, it's in writing and we're following it. Kind of, it's in my head. Or a plan? We're supposed to have a plan? What plan? A poll is going to come up.
There we go. We'll let this go for just a couple of minutes. One quick question while we're letting this go. Somebody asked, so if a newsletter is not called a newsletter, what do you call it?
Yeah, so think it can be anything like a fun update in your inbox, or fun news coming your way, or it could be looking like a blog. So just don't use necessarily the word newsletter, just because that is used so often. Do something fun and creative with that word. And also, you'll even be a higher bonus, do some really fun subject lines. So get people to actually open up, because our inboxes, there's so much going on in our inboxes. So do something fun, catchy, different, and don't put newsletter in the subject line either.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to close this poll, share the results.
Cool.
So do you have a fundraising plan? 5% say yes, it's in writing and we're following it. 40% say kind of, but it's in my head. And then 55% said plan. We're supposed to have a plan.
I love this. This is great. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about the fundraising plan and how we can start putting one together today. So the first 1 to 10 to 1,000 rule, and the first step of that is 1, is a signature event. Yes, I know some of you are like, how can I turn my 8 fundraising events into 1 signature event? But I promise you it's so worth it. Too many events wears you down, your community and your volunteers out. So instead, make it into 1 big signature event where all those 8 fundraising events are then put into one larger event. So instead, rally together a strong committee of all-stars who can help you plan and pull it off. Network to secure as many corporate sponsorships as possible. Create an experience that everyone loves and wants to come back year after year. So ultimately, you'll want to give them substantial return on your investment of time, money, and effort. So this is exactly actually what happened when I launched my own nonprofit and co-founded my own nonprofit. And to this day, they still have their 1 signature event. And every year, people just look forward to it, and they come back year after year, and it's expanded every single year. They know that they can come together with like-minded people and donate a cause that's dear to their heart. And to date, they've raised over 4 times the amount since their first event that was launched about 5 years ago. So continue to, I would really focus on 1 signature event a year. Also, before I go on to number 10, I'm currently working actually with a wildlife rescue nonprofit. And in the last 3 months of this year, so like October, November, December, they have 3 events planned and they are exhausted. They are so exhausted. Events are draining on everyone, and we've already put a plan in place for next year. How are we going to combine them to make it their one big signature event? So if you already have events put into place, just start looking into next year. How can we make it into one big signature event? The second rule is the 10 grants rule. So we encourage you to get 10 grants or even more. Do your research and find flaming hot opportunities and create a deadline calendar so you know what to apply for and when. It's tempting to apply for everything. You can find or all the local foundations in your area, but it's not an effective strategy just to kind of look at every single grant possible. You need to making sure that you apply for grants that align perfectly with the work your nonprofit does. If you're a newer nonprofit, grants do take time and work, so don't be discouraged if you have found it challenging receiving grants. Just keep working at it, trying to get feedback, talk to the grant maker funders and seeing how you can do to approve next year or next application time, and just continuing to remember to apply grants that really align with your values and impact. All right, this is a big one, and it's a little scary, but 1,000 donors. So did I scare you with that number? It's a little scary, but I'm going to encourage you to get to 1,000 donors. Why 1,000? So there seems to be this like sweet spot where fundraising gets easier when you hit that goal. You will start to see really cool things happen once you hit 1,000 donors. So new major donors start to pop up with that number. Also sometimes corporates, and donors start turning into monthly and recurring donors as well. Oh, and some even, which I absolutely love, become ambassadors and set up their own fundraisers for you all. But the key is to finding these donors are ongoing activities, hard work, and there needs to be a strategy put into place every month to how you're going to find these donors. Revert back to finding your ideal donor. 1,000 donors, does that still seem daunting to you? It might, and that's okay. Start small. So say you have 100 donors right now. Your new goal that I'm going to give you is to acquire and to reach to 200 donors. So you're adding 100 donors. Once you've reached 200, your new goal is 400, and so forth. So make small, tangible goals for you. And I know with hard work and dedication and a little bit of strategy, you can find it. So how am I going to find these new donors? We talked about that strategy earlier. Go back and focus on exactly who your ideal donor is. Make sure that you're using language and messaging that appeals to them. And now when it comes to the ask, remember you're asking these ideal donors too. So some strategies to find new donors can include mail appeals, email asks, social media, media coverage, table at community events, speaking engagements at community groups, small gatherings at homes hosted by a board member. So I wanted to share quickly, and I know I'm getting close on time, but I wanted to share really quickly because I think this is something easy for everybody to do. About 2 months ago, there was a quiet time for one of my animal nonprofit clients. And I knew that we didn't want to ask before an upcoming campaign, but I wanted to make sure that we're utilizing our time. So we decided to create an awareness campaign with the sole goal of acquiring new donors through social media. So we ended up developing an animal theme family activity pack. It was 13 pages filled with like fun activities that anybody could do with their families. We put it on social media. It was only up for I think like 5 or 6 days. And we encouraged people to download this fun-filled pack to keep their family entertained during the last couple days of summer. And so, but the trick was, in order for them to download the pack, the kit, the family activity kit, they had to put their name and email, which then signed them up basically for our newsletter and our communications. We only showcased this kit for about 5 days on social media, like I said, but believe it or not, we acquired 115 people through that activity kit. That's 115 new potential donors who was not in our audience before. We didn't stop there. We did a little bit of a strategy and had a 2 email series after post them signing up for the newsletter. We shared a quick short video of the farm, and then the second email was a quick warm-hearted impact story so they could learn about the animals. Both emails ended up having over a 78% open rate, so we knew that this audience was engaged and we knew that they were ready for a future ask. So that is an idea for an awareness campaign, is incentivizing people to sign up for your newsletter through something free that they can sign up for. Okay, I know we have a couple more minutes, but I want to do some fun fundraising math. I know it's Saturday morning, but when it comes down to your fundraising plan, look at your one signature event, your grants, and your 100 donors, and figure out your total number from there. You can add in monthly donors, you can add in other different streams of revenue, but say your goal is $100,000, how are you going to achieve it through small tangible goals like your signature event, your 10 grants, and your 1,000 donors? So now what? Okay, take a deep breath and give yourself a pat on the back because you made it this far. But what can you do with all this new fundraising information? And the first thing is set goals. The second thing is create a written plan that integrates all these new ideas. The third thing is recruit help. Reach out to your board, your volunteers. Maybe it's even time to hire your first new employee, and get busy. I know I'm cheering you on. And before I leave, we of course can't say that create a written plan and then not provide you a written plan. But if you head over to getfullyfunded.com/plan, you will be able to download Sandy's fundraising plan. It's absolutely amazing. All of our clients use it. I use it every single day, and it's for the entire year. It'll be really helpful, especially planning for 2023, which is bonkers to me that we're already planning 2023. But download this plan and get to work. And a lot of what we talked about today will be in this fundraising plan. Finally, stay in touch. You can join our free community on our Facebook group. So it's Fundraising for Founders. And then you can also get weekly tips and inspiration at getfullyfunded.com/inspiration-zone. That is a great way just to stay in touch with us. It's weekly updates to your inbox. And then you can always reach out to me at morgan@getfullyfunded.com for any questions. If you have any questions from this presentation, I would love to answer any. If you want to stay in touch, I'd love to stay in touch. But thank you all so much for inviting me, for letting me be here. Know that I am so cheering you on. I know fundraising is tricky, but remain confident and you will have a successful year ahead.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so very much, Morgan. Just to double check, I was going to post this to the group.
Yep.
You are part of the Facebook group this weekend, the Online CAC Conference Facebook group, correct?
I am, yes.
So if folks want to, just a reminder that is our virtual lobby. So if there are some questions, feel free to go over there. She might be checking in and out a little bit, but she did share her email, so feel free to reach out also. There were a couple of questions, just some more specific questions, but I want to end with one statement out here that just said, Kelly shared, she said, big events give me PTSD. So, and I think a lot of other people feel the same way. So I think that your planning ratios are really good from the standpoint of events. I used to always dread them myself. I was like, oh, it's the day I'm going to get sick. It's the day my kid's going to get sick. It's the day my cat's going to get sick. I was like, so agreed with that. So thank you. This was a great presentation.